My dad gave me, my first camera when I was maybe in middle school. He showed me how to use his camera when I was a younger kid. So I always had cameras, but I never thought enough of it to be, a profession. So in 2005, I started with learning how to properly use a camera. I found a mentor. I did an apprenticeship with a wedding photographer, an event photographer back in Detroit. There, I learned how to light. I learned how to price and work with people, pose. I learned all these different things, but I never wanted to do weddings. That was not what I wanted to do. But I did it for a while and I enjoyed it. Fast forward, I dibbled and dabbled in different areas of photography, and all those things poured into what I'm doing now. All the things that I learned in the different areas of photography poured into what I do now. The other thing is, I had a real hard time before finding my mentor. I had a really difficult time finding somebody who was just willing to take the time to talk to me about what I needed to do to get started, right? Talk to me about focal lengths, talk to me about different camera bodies and different formats. It was just so difficult. Now, this is in the day and age of, was that MySpace or the advent of Facebook, where you could just reach out to people and have conversations online. It wasn't a necessity to meet, but it was really difficult. And then I found the PPA in 2013, and it was just like this world of resources opened up. And I said, you know what? Never again will anybody that I know have to deal with struggling to figure this out, right? But we want to make sure we give what we do to people in an appropriate manner, so they're taking away the necessary skills and understanding of what we do to foster it and make sure that they're carrying it on for the duration. So do you have my presentation?
Yeah, we do.
Awesome. All right. So my presentation is the Unintroduction to Food and Beverage. And the reason why it's the Unintroduction is because I don't want this to be stiff. I want you to ask questions. I want you to engage. I want you to be curious. We're all going to get an opportunity to shoot. Hopefully you brought a tripod. If not, that's fine. But I want this to be more like a family discussion. I want us to be able to interact. And we have some food coming in. I was able to get loose in the kitchen and I stole as much as I could. So we're going to bounce around a little bit too. We're not necessarily going to follow this lineup, but I just got to share with you. So I got here yesterday. My flight landed late. Got here roughly 6 o'clock, and Danny was like, "You got to meet with the chef." And I'm like, "Okay, let's do it." So we go and we meet, and everything is set. Feeling confident. I did my consultation, right? We're good to go. Come down this morning for breakfast. The cook comes out. "What are you talking about?" And I'm like, "What?" So now I'm like, okay, this is not, I said, "I have no food." And he's like, "Yeah, well, the chef won't be here until 10, 11 o'clock. I said, "That's not going to work." So we worked it out. He called me into the kitchen. We discussed a few things, and I was able to steal a few items. But these types of things happen, whether it's mom and pop restaurants, whether it's corporate restaurants, it happens. You do a consultation the one day, you come back, and we don't know. We're not sure. What? Okay, well, whatever. So you learn to pivot. You learn to make things happen and get what you need. So that was my morning. A little bit about me. I am originally from Michigan. I grew up just maybe 20 minutes outside of downtown Detroit. Recently, not recently, but in 2000, I graduated from Eastern Michigan University with a degree in telecommunications and film, where I fell in love with script writing for TV and radio, and got a film degree. Never used it. Came out of school, became a PR manager again for a large nonprofit. From there, I went to telecom. I worked for Sprint, which was actually Nextel at the time, merged with Sprint. And I was with Sprint, became a project manager for Sprint, which was a great learning for me because it helps in what I do, right? When I'm doing my consultations, I use that project management. When we're planning bigger shoots with food and things of that sort, project management is key, right? But luckily, I got a chance to also photograph with Sprint's advertising, in-house advertising agency. So I became an event photographer for them as well. Then we merged with T-Mobile. So all that transitioned over to T-Mobile, and here I am today. Now I am a full-time freelance photographer in food and beverage. I still do events on the side. And we just opened a studio in downtown St. Louis. And there's another product photographer who does more of your hard products, so computers, shoes, some clothing, but I do the food and beverage. And I have the liquor bottles in the bar in the studio to prove it. I moved to St. Louis in 2019, just before the pandemic. And me and my then girlfriend were stuck together. We figured out, hey, this works. So we got married in 2020 in our dining room of our home in St. Louis. So it's been a good 3 years. So enjoying that. I am sponsored by ProEDU. ProEDU is the premier photography education company. Now, I don't say that because I'm sponsored by them, but it's because of them that I'm standing before you today. Their mentorship, their tutorials have been amazing. I'm going to give you all a discount code to order the tutorial or membership of your choice from ProEDU. I will tell you that once you get the code, take advantage. A lot of the tutorials right now are on sale, so you might even get one for free. But that's how deeply discounted they are right now. Yes, sir.
What's the name of that again?
ProEDU.
ProEDU?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. So the cool thing about ProEDU is that they actually pluck real world photographers, people who are, working at a very high level in photography. And it's a very extensive tutorial, and it breaks down everything from how they got to where they are today, their processes and what they do to perform their jobs. It even at times goes into the discussion of pricing, the market, and how the industry fluctuates, as well as pricing and how they work with agencies and things of that sort. So it gets very, very in depth, but they're great tutorials. I hope you'll take advantage of the code. Make sure you get that code from me. I'm going to pop it up on the screen later on. Also, I have partnerships with Capture One. How many people are using Lightroom at this point?
Oh, no, that's one, sorry.
All right, so we got a lot of Lightroom use. Love Lightroom. I still use it today. Don't get me wrong, I still use it. But for what I do a lot of tethering. I have very old eyes, so I need the bigger screens. If I'm doing a larger shoot, I will have my laptop as well as an external monitor. The external monitor, maybe not so much for me, but as I'm moving around the set, it is good to have an external monitor. We'll talk more about that. But the tethering for Lightroom doesn't work that great. So I moved over to Capture One. Yes.
Do you use a wireless tethering in Capture One?
No, not the wireless tethering.
Yeah, oh, no, so you can like disconnect it and keep your tether session?
No,
Oh,
no, I haven't gone that far yet. I'm still running around with this cable. But I do have partnerships with Capture One, and also have partnerships with Paul Buff. Paul Buff is a strobe lighting company I use. For all of the work that you're going to see, I use the E640 Einstein strobe. I have access to other strobes, but Paul Buff is my choice. And I also help them with product reviews and things that they're working on before they go to market. So that's enough about me. Anyone besides Amy using Capture One? Okay, very good. For tethering? Good. All right. So you'll get a chance to see Capture One at some point in the morning. All right, that's enough about me. All right, so what's my motivation? And again, when I started out as a wedding photographer, I really loved the idea of crafting light, right? And that movement between being indoors and going outdoors and making sure that your exposure was correct. That really was something that I struggled with for a while. And then when I started, nailing it down, I really had gained a love for just the way that you could craft light to give shadow and depth and dimension to different things. But then when I moved into food and beverage, it becomes the idea of telling a story. And the best way to do that in food and beverage is to do that with light. So for instance, I will ask, what time of day is it? Doesn't matter, okay. All right, so this is actually 8 p.m. at night that I shot this. But I definitely wanted to craft a scene that would say that it was morning. And then, of course, the elements on your table help tell the story, right? So we have the coffee with the plume of creamer. And then, of course, you have the cinnamon sticks. Now, and then you have the actual cinnamon twist. The interesting thing is it was 6 o'clock in the evening on a Sunday, walking through the grocery store. So where do I find my inspiration? Well, this is one of the places where I find it. Walking through the grocery store, I saw these and I was like, man, these are crusty, they're flaky, the texture is, the beautiful color. I really want to shoot these. So I got home, put my groceries away, set this up, and of course the sun is down. So here again, I'm able to craft light to meet that vision that I had in my head. This is actually 3 shots. I do a lot of focus stacking. Be prepared, you're going to hear these terms over and over again because this is a part of my setup and how I get things done. I do a lot of focus stacking. So this is 3 shots, right? Everybody knows what focus stacking is, right? Okay, cool. So I shot for the mid area, of course, for the glass and the mid area. And I shot for the front of the center sticks and then, of course, this edge here. And then I merged it together to create this one final piece. Again, this is going to be a staple in my workflow. And the reason being is because we all know that at certain aperture speeds, you only get so much, right? And I'm shooting always at manual focus. I'm always shooting mirror lockup. Even now, I'm using a mirrorless camera. I'm still delaying that shutter, right? Because I want to eliminate the amount of shake that the camera's going to get, right? And I'm going to always be tethered because I really want to see with these old eyes that I have a sharp image. Photographer friend just texted me the other day. He did a portrait session, got home, and everything was blurry because he did not want to take out the appropriate gear with him to get it done. So now he has to do a reshoot. So I'm going to always have these things on set. But other places I find inspiration, and this may sound weird, but sometimes I'll take a trip to the local liquor store because there are so many different bottles, so many different colors and shapes. And what you'll find is when you're looking at some of these different bottles and colors, they all react to light differently. So it's always a challenge. It's never the same. But the cool thing is, as you meet these challenges, you start to build your arsenal bag of which you can go in your bag and pull out, and if you run into these situations. The basis of my presentation is a lot of what you're going to see is done at home, right? A lot of what you're going to see is not the stuff that we're doing in the studio, some of it, but a lot of it is either on site or done at home because I want you all to see that you don't have to have a big studio. You don't have to have some big production. You can do this at home. It can be done. And you can create editorial or commercial quality work at home if you have certain things at your disposal. All right. So let me give you a little history on food and beverage, because I always wondered, who was the first person to photograph food and get it printed and actually sell something. And, we've always seen the pictures of fruit and still life scenes of flowers and things of that sort, but it goes a little bit further than that. So in the US, in the mid 1800s, I believe it was the 1840s. Anybody watch The Food That Built America? Okay, it's an awesome show. But these are one of these, yeah, J.G. Martin, the Hublon. He was the first person to get a Polaroid camera. So what he did was he would go to different bars, and this is back during a time where vodka was not popular. I mean, the spirit of choice was bourbon and whiskey, right? But what he did to make vodka popular in the US was he took this Polaroid camera because he had a personal relationship with the founder of Polaroid, and he was able to go around to different bars and take pictures of people drinking a Moscow Mule. I always thought a Moscow Mule was, from Russia, right? But it was founded here in the US. But what he did to popularize that drink was to take pictures. But other fun facts that I found, Andrew F. Smith photographed a series of gelatins for a lady in her kitchen that actually ended up in the newspaper. Those gelatins became the Jell-O brand. John Plum photographed a plate of oysters for a NYC steakhouse. And that was actually published in a news circular. And of course, the first known food and beverage photography advertising, the 1800s, I said it already, 1800s, right? So these are just some little known facts. So let's take it a little bit further. There is a difference between editorial and commercial. Anyone want to take a guess at what the difference is?
One is meant to sell.
What's that?
One is meant to sell.
All right.
Yeah, editorial is real.
Okay. Perfect. Yes. Advertising and editorial food photography serve two distinct purposes. Your advertising and commercial photography is to sell a product. And I'm going to actually kind of share some of the things about commercials, some of the differences, not hugely different, but different, right? What you'll find in what you will find in commercial photography is it's very exact, very exact. Recently, I was in the studio and I just wanted to start warming up. So I went to the local McDonald's and I asked for a Big Mac to be separated in different dishes. And you shoot to also please the words that's going to be on the page, right? Or the words please the image. It can work both ways. But when you're shooting for editorial, sometimes you'll be asked to leave certain spaces or shoot at a certain, whether it's landscape or portrait, to make sure you're leaving words for the page. And we'll take a look at, I did what we call a limiting exercise. I do one a year, and I'll explain a little bit later. But a friend of mine was a layout artist, and she saw the images, and she was like, please send me those images, and I'll show you guys what she sent back. But editorial, again, could be a little bit more playful, leave a little bit more to the imagination. You probably wouldn't see this more so for commercial or packaging work, but you may see this for Buffalo Wild Wings. You may see it for your local wing joint, right? To get you in and say, oh, I want wings. But you leave a little space there because you may hand that file over to their graphics department for them to add words to. And you still want to have that play area there. This is actually cropped down a lot. But a lot of times I'll shoot wider than normal just to give a designer some room to play around with the image.
Question.
Yes.
So you said about words with the picture. Do you, when you're shooting, know what the words that they're going to use are going to go with your picture or not? So you know kind of how to shoot it.
Sometimes, a lot of times, no. And in the brief, they'll have an orientation section where they'll tell you what orientation they want it in and maybe how much space to leave for what they plan to put there. And this is one of the beauties of Capture One. with Capture One, you could actually get content that's already been developed for magazine layout, loaded into Capture One. That way it's on the screen as you're shooting, and you're shooting to that exact content, right? But sometimes you do get that information. Sometimes it's just a spec layout of this is how much room we're gonna need for copy. And you just work to shoot to those specs. All right, styling and presentation. So again, it's really gonna be the same message here. With advertising, it's meticulous. As you saw that burger, the cheese was exact, the lettuce was perfect, everything was perfect. But when you saw the next image with my burger, there was a little, things off, or, just things not perfectly in place. It's gonna be a little bit more meticulous. But again, when you're doing advertising, commercial food photography, you may have 1, 2, or 3 food stylists. And the cool thing about food stylists is there are a lot of different areas that they play in. And a lot of them are certified in different things. Like, I didn't know this until last year, but I was reaching out to a food stylist, and this particular food stylist more so was certified to do cold items. So it was, drinks and ice cream. Like, that's a whole thing. And I was blown away by this because I'm looking for her to help me cook something, and she specializes in cold items. But yes, they have methods where they can style ice cream and like use, there's a glue that they'll use in a glass when building beverages, right? This way that mint is perfectly placed around the fake ice cubes that you're using to create that mojito to give off the perfect look every time. Yes, sir.
You said certified. How did they get certified?
That's a good question. That one I haven't figured out yet. There are classes that they take. A friend of mine is a stylist for America's Test Kitchen. And it's hard to catch up with her shooting schedule. But that's a question I have for her, because she just released a book that focuses on charcuterie boards, right? But these other certifications, I have that same question because I need to know who I'm looking for, right? And if you look up food stylists in some of the search engines, they may say what they specialize in, but sometimes they don't, right? And you want to make sure that you're hiring the best person for the job because, of course, at the end of the day, your reputation's on the line, right? And if your shoot is not going, that project management again, if your shoot is not going through the day as scheduled, and the client's there or the agency's there, that could cause a ripple effect for the next job. So you want to be mindful of that. But great question. And if I find out, I'll definitely share. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
You're hired by someone to do this, and if you need a designer, does that come out of their pocket, or do you add that into your cost?
So it depends on the agency. Great question. Thank you. So the job that we're bidding on now is for a restaurant and bar in San Antonio. We will be responsible for the payroll. We will be responsible for looking for those resources because the owner is looking to offload that. And he's not working with a marketing agency. He's looking to give us that total control. So we'll do the interviewing, we'll do the review of the portfolio, and we will look for those individuals to come in. The unfortunate part is we'll take on the tax liability, but of course, we'll pay those individuals out accordingly. A lot of times, agencies will have their own set of resources that they want you to use. So when I go in to do portfolio reviews with agencies, one of the questions I ask, do you have food stylists or chefs that you all like to work with? And the reason being is because they may work well with that particular individual, but if I don't know them and have never worked with them, and I have to be sure that when I come to the computer or I'm fussing with the camera, thinking about the technical aspect of things, that when I come back, they're still working on schedule during their role. So it really depends on the agency and the budget. but 9 times out of 10, you're gonna be required to source that talent and pay it out. So yes, styling your presentation, editorial, once again, you'll see a little bit more freedom. So it could be a picnic table. It could be with a lot of random things on a picnic table when it comes to editorial. Again, with commercial, you're looking for that more perfect vision or look of food in the presentation. Context and usage. Again, advertising, advertisements, packaging, promotional materials. The aim is to sell that product. Editorial, magazines, blogs, cookbooks, other editorial platforms. I mean, even Instagram now is an editorial platform, right? Some agencies now have in-house photographers who only shoot for social. And it's not as perfect as even editorial. It's really a little bit more haphazard. So you'll find these differences in the storytelling with editorial based on the medium that you're shooting for, right? So something to keep in mind as you move forward. So post-production.
Post-production, getting back to licensing.
Mhm.
So when you're shooting for an agency, are you licensing that particular photo for a certain time limit and price?
Yes, sir.
And, whether or not it's local, national?
Yes, sir. I am licensing for everyone, even if it's the mom and pop. I will never make the mistake again of going to a mom and pop shop and saying, you have to license these images, because then they're like, what? And it really, really throws them off, right? Because they don't understand the terminology and the language. One lady was like, well, I need to get my lawyer involved. And I'm like, well, God, what have I done, right? But I license for everything, right? Because if you don't, you're basically leaving money on the table. Licensing for a mom and pop looks completely different than what it does for a corporate entity or a regional entity. So to your point, when you're pricing locally, regionally, nationally, internationally, those prices are going to change. And oddly enough, those calculators that we used to use are kind of going away, right? Because photographers are now setting flat rates for licensing. It's really weird. But you're seeing that, right? And because now you really skip the national, you jump to international because things are going to be used on web and for social. So yes, I'm licensing for everything. And for the mom and pops, I may say unlimited perpetual. I may do 10 years because they don't have the budget to keep coming back every month or every year even to update some things, right? So you license accordingly, even if it's $10 per image. Make sure you're licensing your images, because this is a way for you to keep control of your images outside of the copyright and how they're being used and how they're being shared. I have a share clause. Once I license that image to you, it's for your use. And you get a courtesy call from the metadata, from the newspaper and from the bloggers sometimes about the extended use of that. And that's another upsellable piece. You could sell an extended use, a shareable use, or what they call multi-use agreement to license that. So that way that the person that you're photographing for, they can use it in other areas. Yes. That's the end. Yes, sir.
So you do more editing, advertising, than editorial, it seems like, from what you have up there.
Yes, far more. And so with advertising, you can see your image completely flipped. I'm thankful enough to be in the studio with my mentors upstairs, and he has Jack Daniels, I mean, the bigger brands, right? And it's funny because he hates to see the images that he creates in the magazines or, on Billboard, because they've kind of manipulated his artwork, right? And I don't want to say he hates to see it, but sometimes it's further manipulated than what he would like, right? So he'll just put what he created on his site and he lets them do what they need to do to sell that particular piece with the mediums that they're gonna put it in. Yes, ma'am.
So if it's licensed, they can still manipulate it?
So your licensing will always have a little fluctuation, right? Your agreement is gonna have some fluctuation. Because for instance, I don't like to give up my raw files. But there are some images, I mean, in some agencies that they're going to need your raw files or a big enough file for them to manipulate. So prime example in the studio, 2 years ago, we had Famous Footwear. Because my business partner does shoes, he does a ton of shoes. And we were to shoot 75 shoes over a 4-day period. We had to turn over the raw files because they were going to then manipulate that file to be used across several different mediums, right? They were going to extract those shoes from the white background that we put them on, and they were going to change the background. But they wanted that ability to be able to alter the shadowing and contrast of that image to fit it into the backgrounds that they wanted to use it so it looked more natural. So walking in Famous Footwear, I'm like, yeah, we shot that on white, but it's not in this field, but it looks great, right? So yes, they want to have the full editing control of that image. And sometimes they're like, well, can you open the aperture a little wider and just shoot one shot for us? And it's like, yeah, no. Because I'm not going to be able to give you the quality that I provide doing it that way. I want to focus tack because I want to focus on that buckle, or I want to focus on this key part of the dish, this flavor cue. I need to be able to sell these things that attract people to this particular subject. Yes, sir.
So when you're giving raw files, are you doing no manipulation on your own at all?
No, we will at the very least merge the files.
Okay,
We'll send them to a retoucher and he will work the layers individually to make sure that they're clean. And then we'll hand them over to the agency
as a raw file.
as a raw file. Yes.
You do the job differently if you're handing over your raws?
No, we shoot the same standard process. Because the rule of thumb, I don't care what area of photography you're in, is to get it right in camera. And one of the reasons why I like Capture One is because I could pixel peep and I can see what's in focus, what's not in focus. And it allows me to go back and make sure that things are exactly what I need them to be. That's just part of our workflow. And we'll shoot the same way, even if it's for a smaller job, we're gonna shoot it the same way because we want to ensure that the quality is there. Yes, ma'am.
Do you charge more than since you're giving your raw files?
Those are 9 out of 10, those are larger jobs that pay very well. So yes, we are, we still own the copyright. It's really the manipulation part. You're giving up that clause. You're giving, in my agreement I have for clients that we don't want them manipulating the image. Please get back with us. We'll have it manipulated for you to the specs. But in those particular jobs, you are giving up that clause that you do not want them to manipulate. They have the freedom to manipulate the raw files. Yes. All right, so let's jump into the mechanics. We talked about a lot. How's everybody feeling? Everybody good? Everybody awake? All right, very cool, very cool. All right, so the mechanics. My gear has changed a lot over the years. I started in my apprenticeship with Nikon, and that was one weekend, and the next weekend I came to help my mentor with a wedding and he had all Canon gear. And I'm like, what the heck? I just learned how to use that camera, right? So, but now I'm shooting Fuji. I never thought that I would leave Canon. And I got a rude awakening recently when I got called out for an event because I had been so focused on food and beverage. And I got rid of all my Canon gear. And somebody was like, hey, we need you to come in and do an event. And I was like, oh my gosh. don't have a camera for an event. So I took this medium format camera and I shot this event and it went well, but it was not the experience that I want to have going forward with events. But for food and beverage, the Fuji GFX 50S or the 100S is a perfect camera for food and beverage. This is what you're gonna find in the studio. These items here are gonna be my mainstays in the studio. The Fuji medium format camera, I'm gonna always use a 120 millimeter lens on my Fuji camera because of the compression. So when I was shooting Canon, for all my food and beverage images, unless it was a bigger food scene, and still today, if it's a bigger food scene, I will use something equivalent to a 35 millimeter. But even with Canon, I was shooting the 100 millimeter macro, the f2.8, because of the compression on all sides, right? I'm not getting the distortion, especially when we're creating hero images, okay? A hero image in food and beverage is that image that you see where it's that extreme up angle, it looks larger than life. And with other lenses, you get that distortion that you don't want, right? Which creates a nightmare for your retoucher, and your retoucher will hate you. But these are gonna be things that I'm constantly shooting with, especially when I'm shooting for beverage. I'm going to use a compendium hood. I'm going to use, which I have with me. This has been my favorite thing. I've owned this for maybe 10 years now. But the Lee compendium hood, it just snaps on, it twists. I'm gonna always use a linear polarizer at the lens level, all right? Especially, not so much for food, but when I'm doing anything with glass or liquids, I'm going to use a linear polarizer at the lens level. And I'm also going to use a linear polarizer film that you see rolled up in the corner there over my beauty dish. In food and beverage and product photography, we practice a method called cross polarization. And basically what that is your linear polarizer at the lens level and a linear polarizer on your top light. So have you ever seen a liquor bottle in an ad that had that nasty reflection at the neck? The reason is because the photographer did not use the cross polarization method. This is not 100%, right? But it helps. It helps the retoucher easily clean that up. And sometimes if you get the distance right between the light, top light, and the focus distance from the lens, you can work these two polarizers against one another to get rid of those hot spots and glares in your liquids and your glasses, okay? So I'm gonna always have this, especially when I'm shooting liquid and glass. I'm gonna have the two polarizers working against each other to create that crosshatch to eliminate those glares. Tether cable, a host of grids. Again, I use the Paul Buff Einstein E640 light. It's been a great light to have. It's portable, it's small, and I can remote change the power settings. My first set of strobes, I had to literally walk around to each light, and I had to continue to do that until I got what I needed. With these, I have a remote. I can just change the power setting really quickly from where I'm standing. And when you're shooting in a small space and you have your, 5 lights pointing at something, you're kind of ducking under things and bumping your head, and it just makes life a whole lot easier when you can do that. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry, so the polarizer, one going to the lens and the other one is through that, right?
Yeah, so when I'm doing beverage, I will have my beverage on the table, and I'll have my beauty dish boomed over the top. And basically what this does, when we get to a beverage, I'll show you where it affects the bottle. But basically it affects the shoulders of the bottle and the top cap. But it also gives you a lot more light to the back of the bottle, right? And I have a linear polarizer in that beauty dish along with a 30-degree grid because I want to straighten that light out. But as I turn the beauty dish and I turn the polarizer at the lens level, those linear blades start to knock down that reflecting light onto the bottle. And then if you let me know, I have a link where I have an article where I fully walk through how that process works. Parabolics, light, it was a toy. I wanted it. It works. I will actually put this behind a Roscoe diffusion paper, right? 3030, I believe it is, Frost diffusion paper. I will put that light behind it. Because what I'm trying to do in camera is, or on set, is I'm trying to get a white light, right? That's coming right through that diffusion paper, hitting the back of my bottle. A cart, listen, I'm not a young man anymore. So I will put all this stuff on a cart and I will wheel it right into a restaurant and I'll leave it, out of the way. Intervalometer and the optical snoop. The optical snoop I mainly use for labels. And we're going to talk about labels a little bit more. But I use that for labels because I want to pinpoint my light on the label, because that's going to be very, very key in beverage photography. If you miss the label, you miss the boat, you may not get paid. So I use the optical snoop because I can dial in my light. I can add things to the light to soften it or polarize it from that light level as well. But I use that optical snoop just because I have a little bit more control of the light that's hitting the label on the bottom.
Which model we use?
The Paul Buff, that one there. I forget the actual name of it. But I really like the Gobo holder for it because it has blades and it allows you to further cut light from your subject. So, but that's the one that I'm using currently. All right. Okay, I have a food kit. My food kit is a little toolbox, and these little things are in my food kit. And I will take this on set with me, because if you're going to be in food and beverage, you are going to at some point become your own food stylist. No ifs, ands, buts about it. The chef is going to prepare based on that consultation, and you may have to alter, right? Because something may come out and it may be beautiful, but there may be a line there that may draw your eye away from the focal point of the image. And you may want to trim that piece of lettuce or move things around. So I have things like tweezers or scissors or paring shears, a toothbrush, not toothbrush, but a paintbrush, which has been like a huge thing in my food kit. Cotton swabs, Q-tips, again, huge, right? They bring out a bowl of soup or something with a liquid in it, and maybe it's on the edges, just little driplets on the edges. You just take a Q-tip, just wipe it out. Depending on the Q-tip that you use, it will leave less fibers in your dish. That way you don't have to worry about it later. But these are items, canned dairy. Mineral oil is huge. The burger that you saw early on is set on the table for hours. And it eventually dried up. So you just put a little bit of mineral oil and get clear mineral oil, because if you get the gold or, one of the colored mineral oils, it could come off and create a cast on your food. But you want to put a little mineral oil on your table or on your brush and just gently paint it on, and it'll freshen up the look of your food. So this is down at Paul Buff Studio down in Nashville, Tennessee. We were shooting a video that has not been released yet for food and beverage using some of their newer lights. And this is going to be one of my key setups. Again, I'm going to have a beauty dish boomed over the subject. I'm going to possibly have a kicker light behind the bottle onto the background. As you can see here on the far light, I do have that optical snoot pointed at my label. And I have a strip box on this light because I want to get a very fine gradient line on the edge of the bottle, not on the front of the bottle. If you take a look out on Instagram or some of the ads, you'll see photographers are taking two strip lights, putting it in front of the bottle, and you got these two thick strip lights. That's not how that works. The idea behind photographing your label and your bottle is to create those light and dark shadows and gradients to give that bottle that sense of roundness, depth, and dimension. And when you put those two strip lights there, it works, but it's not the most appealing to the brand. Okay,
Do they have grids in those?
was that,
Are those grids or no grids?
so
The strip lights.
the strip lights, no, I don't, yeah, no grids. Sometimes I even take the inner baffle and the baffle out and just shoot it bare above, but I have that shape from the box itself. Yes, sir.
There are these scrims, part of the strip box and stuff, like.
Scrims are, yes, yes. Not necessarily scrims, I will use diffusion papers. Because of their properties, right? The treated diffusion papers will help, soften and expand that light to certain areas. So yes, I will use a roll of diffusion paper, same concept, but yes. Yep. Anyone else? Did I miss anybody? All right. Okay, this is 12 shots. The Johnny Walker Blue bottle is a very difficult bottle to photograph. And the reason being is because, as you can see there, they have these blue edges, but the remainder of the bottle is clear for the liquid. This is a part of that brand of Johnny Walker. That makeup is a part of the story for Johnny Walker. Each bottle has its own story. And as a food and beverage photographer, you have to make sure that you're telling the story. Whether it's beverage, whether it's food. So if you're dealing with ethnic dishes, you want to know, what is the story behind this dish? And you want to convey that. The labeling in the Johnny Walker brand is part of the story. So 12 shots to get this. And to your question earlier about the top light, the grid. If you look just up top here, you'll see around the shoulders, you're starting to get a little bit of light, but on the top part, there's a little bit of light on the cap to help you define that cap at the top. But that's basically what your top light is for your cap and your shoulders, and to give you the opportunity to push light back through the bottom. So the way to do that, to push light through the back of the bottle, I had to go there, is to use reflective cards. All right. Joanne Fabrics, Michaels, Dick Blick, any art store, get you a host of reflective cards. For liquor, especially for whiskeys and bourbons, because that's also a part of the story, is the color of the liquid in the bottle. A lot of times we do not use unless the client is going to send multiple bottles for you to actually use the liquor in a pour, you're recreating the liquor. And I can show you that today. But you'll use a gold card to kind of help embellish that color of the liquor. And basically I will put this behind the bottle. I got my top light here, and I'll catch a little bit of that light. And I love these because they're flexible, right? So if I'm getting too strong of a light, I can always bend it, and I can also redirect it. But I'm doing this by hand. So it takes a little bit more work because you can't necessarily see what's coming through the camera as you're doing this. So if you have an assistant that's well-versed at holding reflective cards, that's great. But if you're doing this at, by yourself at midnight in your basement, you just have to kind of struggle it out, right? But this is definitely how I'm getting that gold reflection into back into the liquid. Okay, so this was the piece I was talking about earlier with limiting exercises. A limiting exercise is where at the top of the year, well, really in December for January, I'll take a week or 2 weeks, and I will limit myself to a specific piece of gear, right? This was 2020, 2021. I decided that I wanted to work only with my top light. I was not going to use any other light to do beverage. Because I wanted to further, figure out how my top light was affecting my beverage shots. So I set up my top light, and this was the outcome. Walking through Total Wine, I saw this bottle, and it appeared to be black, but it is not. As you can see, it's green. I happened to get the bottle home, and I was doing something with it, and light passed through, and I'm like, this bottle was green. But when I got it on set, the light really wasn't pushing through it. So I used the silver card just behind, they're all gold cards. I used the silver card to put just behind the bottle, and I captured that corner where it started broadcasting the green through the bottle, or the light through enough silver light through the bottle to push the green element out.
Excuse me, George,
Yes.
the chef wants to know your timing.
Yeah, we can come in. We can say that.
Come in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So for the remainder of the bottle, and as you can see on that right side of the bottle, you see that little bit of edge light there, that's coming from your top light, and you can embellish that a little bit more with a white card. Especially on darker surfaces. You can use a standard white foam core card to push back light into your subject. And that's how I was able to create some of the edge lines from that top light. It's by using a host of reflective cards and white cards, and in some instances, black cards. Same thing for the bottle cap. I did use a gold card for the bottle cap. If you look just at the bottom, where it says gin, you'll see where that gold card is reflecting on that piece of the bottle there. But it's the element in the top of the cap has a lot of gold foiling, and I wanted to promote that. So I put a gold card just under there to kind of push the light back into that cap. Here are some other items that I'm going to use to recreate some of the flavor cubes. Fake ice cubes. Now, there are a lot of fake ice cubes, but they are not created equally. So, I'm sitting at home with the wife, and I'll start giggling, and she's like, "What's funny?" And I'm like, "They use some bad ice cubes." And she's like, "What?" These ice cubes actually react like actual ice cubes would. So they'll sit in your glass. They're not necessarily going to float up if you're drinking alcohol. They're not going to float up. But they're very, very lifelike ice cubes. These run approximately $45 each, and you need a lot of them, right? You're not going to see real ice in a lot of my shots. You're going to see the fake ice cubes, because a lot of times this stuff is sitting on set, and it's just sitting there under hot lights. And what I've noticed about real ice cubes, especially if you get them with purified water, they look great, but they also refract light differently, right, than the fake ice cube. So I like to have a little bit more control over my beverages. I will use the fake ice cubes. Ice powder. Ice powder is, anybody familiar with grits? Grits?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Ice powder looks just like grits. You pour a little bit of it into a small dish, you add a little bit of water, let it sit, and before you know it, you have these little crystals that look like they're shards of ice. They make two different versions. You can get those, and you paint them on with a paintbrush. It is very time consuming. It could be a very much pain in the behind, but when you get it on perfectly, it looks amazing. They will also sit on the bottle for a long time before they actually start to move. Water and glycerin. I usually use a 51% glycerin to a 49% water mix. I do measure it because when I get it in an atomizer, I need to make sure that my glycerin is not running down the bottle, that it's actually sticking and it's beading. Another method to get the condensation beads on your glasses is to use a steamer, a regular clothes steamer. You turn the steamer handle upside down, Just run it across the glass a few times and it'll start to condensate like a real beverage would. But those are the two methods that we'll use to get condensation on glasses and bottles. Yes, sir.
What are the grits used for?
That's the ice powder. They look like grits. So once they absorb the water, they turn into those crystal beads that you see there.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I've done just a little bit of food photography. I've used, watered up saran wrap to look like crushed ice.
Okay, okay. All right, that, I haven't heard that one. I like to see that. And it's interesting, if you know, now there are a lot of food stylists on Instagram that are giving away tips and tricks of how to do different like forms of ice and things of that sort. I just learned the other day that if you put syrup in a pot and heat it up and let it boil over a little bit, that it becomes like a putty. And that way, when you put it on your pancake, you can kind of style it. And if you need to take it off, it comes right off. I was like, why didn't I think of that? Okay. So yeah, there are a lot of tips. There's a like, it's like Photoshop. There are different ways to approach the same thing, right? And the more you do this, the more you'll find those different techniques. This was actually a shot that I did I was a social media influencer for Budweiser, and they sent me a lot of beer. A lot of beer. And I like beer, and I was like, this is ridiculous. And all those crystal ice droplets that you see on this bottle, that's what stayed. The remainder of them were at the bottom of the set, and it just started looking like it was a snowman or something because they were sliding down the bottle. I was like, this is not working. But when I went back to look at the image, I was really impressed with the bow tie portion of the bottle. Budweiser is one of their mainstays, is the Budweiser bow tie, right? So when I saw that, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to capture this portion. We'll delete the rest, and I'll send that over.
Is that the ice powder?
That's the ice pop, yes, sir. Yeah, with a little bit of glycerin. So that's gonna be the 51-49% mix of glycerin and water. And as you can see, it gives you some really nice beads, droplets on the bottle. And what helps that ice powder or crystal ice stay in place is sometimes your glycerin and water mix. It will really help keep things in place, especially if they're not running themselves. But I thought that was a great image. And as you can see, I have the strip box lighting just the side of that bottle. And it's giving me that clean line down that bottle edge, helping me kind of give you that depth and dimension of roundness in the bottle of the neck of that bottle. So let's talk a little bit about brands and marketing as a way for the food to come in, and then we'll take a break and I'll set everything up to shoot some food, and I want to have you all shoot food as well, and then we'll play around with food. I'll tell you, a lot of times you don't want to eat this stuff. It may have pins in it. People have handled it and put it on the table, and you're like, oh God, no. But sometimes the shoots go fast enough to where if there's some left over, people will partake. Shooting for brands is going to be, it can be tricky. You want to have good consultations, multiple consultations. You really want to understand the brand story, especially when you're dealing with beverage. You want to understand the brand story. Any bourbon drinkers in the room? All right. So you guys know that even outside of whiskey, bourbon has a very, very, very interesting story depending on the bottle that you purchase. I have an image that it's a portfolio image that I shot of a Blade and Bow bourbon bottle. That particular brand has a very, very mysterious way of how they make that particular bourbon. It's what they call a Solaris or key system. But you have to understand these things about the items that you're capturing, because you want to be able to recreate that story in your images. More importantly, You have to stay on brand message, and you have to be sure not to send the wrong message. So I will ask you, what do we think is happening in the two images here?
Yeah.
Right? Every ad that you see says drink responsibly. This is not drinking responsibly, ladies and gentlemen.
I look like a fraternity party.
Exactly. Which is a bit concerning because I actually pulled this from Budweiser's social site, right? This is the brand itself. And if you look at the shoes, it looks like these could be teenagers, right? They're playing a drinking game. They have crushed the cans after maybe they've slammed that beer. We have to be careful. We have to be good custodians of our craft, but more importantly, especially if we're trying to sell a brand's image and their messaging. And I pulled this for that purpose. Even if you look at the Polaroid picture up there, they look young, right? I was really shocked to see this, but I thought it was a good message to be a part of the presentation, so I wanted to share. So be mindful of that. The second image is when I first started out in beverage, and I did a portfolio review with my mentor, and he said, it's a good image, but was somebody having a bad day? Were they taking shots by themselves and drinking? And I said, no, I just thought it looked good to turn the glass over. He said, well, that's kind of the vibe that you're getting. You never really want to, and I'm starting to see a lot of beverage images being published where there's one glass. You never want to tell people that it's okay to drink alone, right? You never want to tell people that it's okay to take shots. And, this could be kind of aggressive, right? Maybe, that person had a bad day and they're taking shots. You don't want to send that message. The idea is to always drink responsibly. So we have to be mindful as food and beverage photographers to tell the story, but make sure we're staying on message, but at the same time, be good custodians not to send a bad message. Labels. Labels are going to be very, very important. Brands spend hundreds of thousands on demo testing, right? So they bring in focus groups. Just think about Pepsi and Coca-Cola. When Pepsi removed the word Pepsi from their logo, you still recognize that brand mark. Same thing with Coca-Cola. When they removed Coke, and there was just a wave, you recognize that. So you have to always uphold that label in its best light. Brands spend a ton of money to do it. It's our jobs to make sure it's promoted properly. When I'm shooting beer, I am scraping the label off of the back of the bottle, or sometimes I'm taking all the labels off and I'll ask for fresh labels, and I will glue the label on myself. Because as you can see, there's the wording in the bottle that's embossed there. There's a pour spout on one side of the bottle. There are seams in the bottle. And if your label is interacting with someone, because these bottles are running through a machine and they're spinning the whole time, and then they slap the label on and they ship it out. So by repositioning the label, if you have access to it, you can avoid that. So you don't get that ugly seam or that pour spout. You don't get some of the embossing in the glass to be so prevalent in your shot. But if you're not, then you have to go to the store, buy a couple of 12 packs, and good luck. You look for the best one, and you scrape that label off of the back because you want the light that's going to pass through your bottle to be unobstructed. Then I'm going to use a clear coat spray paint, and I'm going to paint that bottle and that label. Do not use Rust-Oleum. It will cause your label to run. Use a standard clear coat. It also helps with the shine of the label, but it doesn't give off so much reflection that it becomes a problem with your lights. But you definitely want to make sure you're spraying your bottle with a clear coat, because that glycerin and water, your crystal ice and your ice powder is going to wilt your label, and we have just diminished the label in the brand. So by doing that, you protect the label, and it can sit on set for a few hours as you get things prepared. Yes, ma'am.
How do you not screw up the label by peeling it? How do you not screw up the label peeling it?
You know, the one off the back.
off the bat.
Oh, that.
Yeah, so I will actually soak the labels on liquor bottles as well. I'll soak those labels in CLR. And let it sit for like maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes, and then I'll use a razor blade. Please, if you're using a razor blade, use a razor blade going upward when you're shaving that label off, because I try to do it going downward. And if you hit the right piece of glue, razor blade flips upside down and your hand goes right into it. Had it happen. So go upwards. When I first started learning how to do this, my mentor took everybody out to the back of the studio, had us take every label off of the bottle. He went down to Budweiser, got brand new fresh labels. We glued them back on, we clear coated it, let it sit overnight. And this could take several days, right? For you to get the label off and to clear coat it, you may want to do 2 coats of the clear coat. That could take a whole day if you just let it set. The application of the glycerin, just waiting for the crystal ice and the ice powder to absorb the water and get transparent, that could take a few hours. So it could be 2 or 3 days before your bottle is ready to be shot. Yes, ma'am.
How long is that ice powder good for once it hydrates?
Ugh. I have left
How long was the use time?
the use time, 24 to 48 hours, I have seen, depending on the conditions in your studio. After that, even in the dish that you're pulling it from, it starts to dry out. I mean, these little, they hold more than 10 times their weight in water. And they will expand, they'll become transparent, they look great. But eventually they die as well. And if you're using this stuff at home, please do not flush it or put it down the sink. Take it outside somewhere and let somebody else deal with it. But this stuff, again, because it holds so much its time and weight in water, it could really mess up your sink system or sewer system if you constantly putting it down there.
So the clear coat of spray,
Mhm.
just
Yeah,
have a matte finish,
not matte, because matte is gonna be dulling.
okay?
Use just a standard gloss kit. I didn't say that, gloss clear coat.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Gloss clear coat. Yeah, the matte could really give you a weird effect. And I don't have an image where I use too much gloss and it looks like a matte if you use too much of it after a second or third application. And it looks really bad. It actually will turn your glass to like more looking like a plastic, like a fake bottle. That's what happens. So thanks,
I
yeah,
was curious.
yeah.
Matte doesn't give you any shine.
No, not at all. All right, so again, from Budweiser, they were sending things to the house and I'm like, okay, I need to figure this out. I asked my contact at Budweiser, I said, who's the demographic for this? And it was women between 24 and 35, I think it was. And the ads that I was seeing, I'm like, well, it doesn't really speak to that. So I said, and this is not beer. It has the Bud Light moniker, but it's not beer. It's actually seltzer water with a little bit of alcohol in it. So I kind of wanted to twist the brief a little bit, and I added the strawberry, and I added the swirly straw is what I call it. And I wanted to push light through the glass. So I have my parabolic light behind a piece of diffusion paper, just pointed at the back of the glass. And I pushed that light through to give it a little bit of a little bit of a glow there. Those are fake ice cubes in the glass. And I was really trying to get that good fizz. So I had a really long straw. And at first I was drinking the stuff out and then I started feeling a little loopy. And I'm like, this isn't good. So I had to start, so have a beer pump, which is the standard like water pump to get these things out of your glass. This way you don't have to move your glass on your set. Because again, if you're compositing, you don't want things to move because you can make it a problem for your retoucher later to kind of realign things. But yeah, this turned out pretty good. If I were to do this again, I would do each piece individually. This is actually all one shot. I would definitely shoot the cans individually because I would want the light to fall in different places. And I'm really happy with the way that the glass came out. But there are some inconsistencies in some of the shadow areas that I would really love to have more control of. And I could have achieved that more if I would have shot each can individually and then merged them as a composite.
And George, is that glass bigger than the cans?
Yes, yes, yep. Just slightly, just slightly, yeah. So this is the shot that got me my ambassadorship that I had with Budweiser. I thought I did something wrong. Oh, the food is here? Oh, okay, okay. I thought I did something wrong because Budweiser sent me a DM and it was like, could you contact us? And I'm like, oh. I'm like, oh, what have I done? But luckily they were calling me to offer me an ambassadorship and I was grateful. They saw this image, but this is actually 3 shots. Because again, the label is very important. It has a slight lean to it, but it's not laying down, right? I really wanted to focus on the label because the label was at the time, it was something a little bit different. You know, the only label you were really seeing at the time was maybe Harps and Guinness. You weren't seeing a lot of black labels. And you weren't, this is around the time where you started seeing beer that was coming from a bourbon barrel, right? Very strong stuff. So the partnership with Jim Beam, and I was loving the golds and the reds. So I shot for the top portion of the label. And if you really take a close look, just under the AB label, Anheuser-Busch, you can see where my Crystal Ice at one point that was here, and my glycerin and water actually started to run. But that's fine because if you reach into a cooler and you pull it, it's gonna run, right? So you're giving those lifelike flavor cues to your image, even though they're recreated. But the client or the viewer is gonna see that and say, hey, I want a beer, right? A cold beer. So this image was also done during the limiting exercise. So this is one light. And this is the setup. I have the one light with the grid and the linear polarizer at the top, my compendium hood with the linear polarizer at the lens level, a host of gold cards pushing that same top light, that one light back into the bottles, highlighting the different areas that I wanted to promote in that image. I went as far as to cut a circle in one of the gold cards and held it just in front of the lens, just because I wanted that light that came from the top light to hit that gold card at the lens level and push back to that label. Again, if you have somebody that can help you with this, it makes it go a lot faster. But you know, this is why I do this, because it's always like a science equation that is ever changing and you have to figure it out. And by doing limiting exercises, I'm confident that just like this morning, or just if I'm on set, if something were to fail or go wrong, I could recover and we could save the day and we can get the shoot done. So that's the importance of doing a limiting exercise. Because as you limit yourself to those certain pieces of equipment, you're more confident that if it goes wrong, that either you can fix it or you know how to quickly pivot and get back on track.
Are you using a trigger to fire your camera?
I was when I was shooting Canon. I was using a trigger. Now through Capture One, I have the app, so I can carry my phone around, and I can trigger my camera through Capture One by the phone. Yep. Again, you can do this in your home. You don't need a huge space or big production to do these things. This is a natural light shot. I used a gold reflective card, very similar to this guy here, to put at the base of the stake. I wanted a more moodier shot. I wanted a little bit more shadows. But you don't want too much shadow because just like in portraiture, too much shadow, it's blocked up black. It just doesn't, sometimes it just doesn't look good, especially with food. This is 5 shots. I shot for the onion, the knife itself, the mushrooms. I shot for the top part of the steak, and then I shot a separate shot with the gold card pointing at the bottom of the steak just to give it a little bit more light, just to kind of soften that shadow just a little bit. Didn't want it to be too dark, but I wanted to still have that moody feel that you have at a nice steakhouse, smokehouse, or whatever. I just wanted it to have that feel, so I used the gold card to kind of push light back into that portion of the steak. Even on the mushrooms and slightly on the onion, not so much on the knife because the knife was already kind of overexposed. I used the gold cards in those 3 areas just to give it a little life back into the food aspects there. Same thing. These were done in the kitchen. I take that back. The summer juices were done in the studio. The avocado shrimp toast was done in the kitchen. And using natural light, and again, a host of white cards to kind of reflect light in certain areas, just so we don't have shadow. Even though I use fake ice cubes in the summer juice, I did put those into the freezer for maybe 30 or 40 minutes. And then I brought them out on set because I wanted to get some of the water condensation onto that cutting board. And you know how you get the ring of water? I wanted to give more of that. So I did put that in the freezer and then take it out and let it sit. One of the things that happened was, if you look at the bottom, in the initial shot, there was that blueberry that's here was actually here. And it created this tangent where my eye just kept going right to the bottom. And then there was this blueberry here, and I'm like, why did I do this? So I kept going through the image, but I would get stopped right here because I'm going back now, right? Because we want our eye to circulate through the image completely before it's broken. And I couldn't do that because I would get here and I would notice that my blueberries created this line to the strawberry, and this is where my eye was broken. So I had to move it slightly over. It's still somewhat of a tangent because you could kind of piece it together, but not so much. Because you want your eye to circulate through that image fully to get a full idea of what's being sold there. So you got to watch for the tangents. And this is what I was saying earlier about working with restaurants and chefs. They'll bring things out. There may be a tangent there because you're shooting, they're not. And you might want to adjust for that. So you're not having those tangents. Yes, sir.
So you photostack and you also do composites. Do you ever use light painting to highlight different pieces while you're doing different pieces?
Just with these.
So you reflect, okay.
Just the reflector. Because there are certain pieces that I want to pop in the image, and I'm going to use these to create that. Yes. Yes, ma'am.
When you're thinking about the overall concept and working with the client and the composition of the food itself, the placement, how much are you trying to have your own style go into the brand versus what your competition out there, like what everyone else is doing? How do you deal with those ideas?
You know, sometimes, to be honest with you, depending on who you're shooting for, you're kind of stuck. Because the clients, like for instance, I can come out here all day and do this pretty summer beverage with all the fruit, but the client may say, hey, we want that same glass with the mint, no straw on white. And I'm like, what? Right? Sometimes you just don't have a say. You know, they want what they want because they're using it a specific way. But the client is hiring you because of how you shoot. And that's why it's so important for us to produce portfolio pieces. So people can better understand your style of shooting, right? So these things, these are images I use to build my portfolio because I want people to see that I shoot into the food. If you open any food magazine right now, I guarantee you 99% of the images are going to be top down. Very flat, shadows, high contrast. That's not my style. Please do not call me because I'm going to have a tough time giving you that, right? So sometimes you are kind of stuck if you want to do those jobs. But a lot of times when people are hiring you, they're hiring you because this is the style that they want to see in the end result. So you're able to kind of negotiate that thing. But yeah, sometimes you just gotta give them a bit of it. All right. Okay, so again, in the kitchen, I am not a food stylist. My wife, a little bit better at it than I am. My wife is a UT Austin grad. There's this place that we love on 6th Street that makes shrimp tacos. And one morning she was like, hey, what if we have shrimp tacos? And I said, yeah, let's do it, right? Like the ones in Austin, she was like, yeah. She made them and I was like, can I have just a few minutes? And listen, my wife, she doesn't eat a lot. So when she's hungry, she's ready to eat. But she understood. And then when I started pulling it together, she started helping. And when she started seeing this come together, she was like, oh, okay. And this is what came out of it, right? So when you have inspiration, shoot it because this can go in your book. This can help get your next job, right? And this is exactly, we just kept building on it. We just kept building on it. It's to the point now where, you know, we'll be preparing meals for certain, or getting ready to go get things for certain meals. And she'll say, well, do you think you might want to shoot it? Because my wife loves to experiment with things. Like she made recently cheddar bay crust pizza in a cast iron skillet. And she used a bunch of different seafood. She's from Charleston, South Carolina. So we're going to always have some seafood somewhere. And she comes up with these ideas. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I need to shoot that. But I need to forewarn her as best as I can because when she's hungry, she's ready to go. But we kept building this image. And again, I'm using the fake ice cubes. I'm not, in this particular image, I'm not a huge fan of how the fake ice cubes came out because they do look a little plastic, right? To combat that, you can add droplets of water to it, you know, to kind of throw off some of that plastic look. But again, it's one of those things where you can do this in your kitchen. You don't have to have a big space to do it. All right. On location. Let's see. I am going to say, let's take a break. Quick bathroom break, stretch our legs. That'll give me the opportunity to see what my chef friend came up with for us in the back there and then set the table. And I'll shoot a few pieces and then we'll jump into a little bit more of the presentation. And then we'll have you all shoot as well. All right?
Paul, he wants you to come up and shoot. Take a look at where your feet are before you pick your camera up, okay? We don't want everybody to trip on a wire.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So got a little bit of time left. I do want to make sure everyone has the opportunity to not just shoot the food, but style the food the way you want to. So a few things, and if we could switch back to the, I'm hoping we can get this. I got capture one up. Is that?
It's what you're currently sharing. You may have to
Oh.
change.
Hold on. Let's see. What if I do this? There we go. Okay. Okay, so this is capture one. This is an auction item. I switched to capture one because I was setting up for a photo shoot. And realized that Adobe did an update that Apple wasn't aware of, and tethering was no longer an option at that period for Lightroom. I ranted about it on Twitter and Capture One sent me their product for free for the first year and I was hooked. So tethering and control is why I love Capture One so much. Because again, I got these old eyes, so I gotta make sure I'm getting what I need to get. Just like in Lightroom, you're able to adjust your camera settings right here from Capture One. So if you can look up here, I am changing my exposure triangle to what I would normally, hey. This is my starting point. 100 ISO, and I'm using lighting. And typically I'm using strobe lighting. So I'll start off with a 100 ISO, 1/25th of a second at the shutter, and f10 is my aperture. With the Fuji, you don't have as wide of ranges as white balance as you do with the Nikon. They have some other features for white balance. So typically I'll shoot either in Kelvin or I will shoot all white balance here, and then I can adjust in Capture One later. But color balance and color theory in Capture One is far greater defined than what you will find in either Lightroom or what is Apple's called? Aperture? What is Apple's software program called?
It used to.
Yeah.
Well, it used to be, they don't have.
They don't have it anymore, so that's, I don't even use it.
It was aperture.
Okay, so the color theory in Capture One, I mean, it goes a long way. We could be here for the rest of the day talking about it if I could find it. But it's in here, but we'll go back to the shooting. I can either control Capture One from an app on the phone, or I can use the keyboard by choosing Command K to shoot. Oh, that's not gonna work. We're using constant lighting, so I'm gonna make a quick adjustment here. Okay, that's a start. Back to step. All right, so as I go through that, that's better. All right, so when doing food photography, always have an apron or a cloth to put in your pocket. Because there may come a time in the process of doing your shoot where you may need to wipe your hands. If in your food kit you don't have wet wipes, Clorox bleach wipes, or something to that effect, you may want to add that. Because sometimes using your tweezers or your forceps or other implements to move the food around, sometimes you just got to pick it up. And you do not want to put that back on your camera, nor on your laptop. Typically, I would wear white gloves when handling silverware and glassware. Because especially with your newer cameras, you are going to find that, well, really, even with some of the previous cameras, you're going to find it picks up everything. Everything is there. So you may come into a restaurant and these things are on the table. They may have spots and blemishes. You want to work with your kitchen through your consultation to make sure everything's clean. And they did give me clean glasses. But even though they run them through the dishwasher, you may want them to hand wash them, but you definitely want to clean them out. So keep some microfiber cloths as well. Because again, these may not necessarily be in your shot, but certain things can pick up light and create things, elements in your image that you may not want to have. All right. So your table may be set when you walk into a particular restaurant, but you have the autonomy, unless there's something specific they want and they're set, you have the autonomy to change these things. One of the difficult things that you'll run into is glasses on your table. Why? Because they're circular a lot of times, or if they're square, they can pick up light and they shine in 4 areas in that one glass. And it can put some really interesting things into your glass with it. So you'll always move around your light. For instance, this light was in the shot just a tad bit. Now, in my food kit, I also have little pony clamps to help me out, right? Or you can use a glass on the table. Being that the light is coming from this side, you may get a little bit of a shadow on that side there. In this case, I'm getting a lot more shadow on the front. We'll just take a test shot here. Uh-oh. All right. So at Destiny, one of the things that I will carry on set with me is a geared tripod head. And the reason why I like this head is because the knobs don't necessarily get in the way of the camera. So if I have to put my face up to the camera, I'm not worried about bumping or moving something that may later cause me a problem in post because we're focus stacking, right? We're taking multiple shots to make that one. So I can incrementally move my camera and I don't have to unloosen the ball head and then it's all over the place, right? So I can incrementally move these, if I can just be gentle here, to get the angle that I may need in several different directions. Now, on occasion, I will take a rolling stool with me to a restaurant because sometimes you want to just get low and you want to be able to quickly move around and not, again, run the risk of bumping your camera. Now, again, I am manually focusing. I should have my camera delayed by at least 2 seconds. Even though I will not depress the shutter button on the camera, I'm using a computer, I'll still do it. It's my thing, right? I want to make sure that I don't have any shake. And when I meet with clients, they always say, hey, you know, your images are always so sharp. And I like to attribute the fact that I have that delay and I'm manual focusing to that, giving me sharper, clearer images.
So George, I see that you're using one light and you're coming across this food.
Mhm.
You're doing it for texture.
For texture, yep, exactly. And, you know, same thing with the angle of the camera, shooting down or shooting across, you're gonna really pick up those textures. But yes, with the light, I'm raking it across, just as if you would a window, right? You want that light to rake across your subject so it picks up the textures. Did I see another hand? No one? Okay. Now, I don't, but you can use a light meter with food. I know several photographers that do, it does help. But I like to play around a little bit because I want to see what different effects I get at different areas, another exposure triangle. And I will take you back here to Lightroom, to Capture One, excuse me. They have something called a focus mask. And the focus mask so if you can see on the edges of the pancake, and I shape these pancakes this way on purpose. So you can see that certain things are just not going to be in focus, especially at F4. So, you know, I may want to bump the aperture up a little bit. But if you can see that little green specks on the edge of the pancake, that's the focus mask in Capture One. So for those of us who want that extra assurance that things are in focus or to know what's in focus in that particular shot or layer, the focus mask is a great way to know that, hey, this particular area of the image you just shot is in focus. One of the other key features, you can add extra grids. There's an exposure warning here. You can turn on that will show your exposure highlights. There are a whole list of things in this control panel. And if you're using Lightroom today, you can customize Capture One to have the same menu layout as Lightroom. This way you can kind of ease into getting to know Capture One a little bit better. One of the features that has also been very beneficial, especially if you're working with brands, especially during COVID. The famous footwear shoot, we did a shoot for T-Mobile for their home internet during the COVID periods, and the team for T-Mobile especially was in the Seattle area. I mean, the Seattle, Washington area. And the company would not allow them to come down to Kansas City. So we had to set it up to where while we were shooting, the producers and the creative directors back in Seattle could see what we were shooting in real time. And through Slack, a Slack channel that we had built, they were able to quickly communicate with us and say, no, we need to change the angle. But Capture One has a feature similar to that now. Your client can see what you're shooting in real time. They are limited to just being able to rate those images. They can't yet leave notes in Capture One for the photographer to see. Now, I've made that recommendation based on what we've experienced. I don't know if it's going to come out or not, but these are just some of the benefits of Capture One. So if you have the client in studio and they may be working in the office of your studio and not on the shooting floor, and they have their laptops because they're working on other business for the day, they can quickly pop into that portal and they can see what you're shooting in real time. That way you're lessening that delay in response and being able to move through your day a little bit faster. Yes, sir.
So I was wondering, so just so that I have this straight, when you're photographing food and you want to go to different focus places, do you actually move the camera or you just?
I just move the focal point.
Just a focal.
Yeah, so this is why I'm going to be tripoded, because I don't want the camera to ever move. I don't want my set to move. But I will, and I really wish we could do that.
So you can just touch the back.
I could touch the back of the camera.
Okay.
And just like in your, doing portraiture, you can move that focal point around. And I will choose different sections of this plate to capture to make sure that I have a solid image when it's all said and done.
Perfect.
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you move the focal point in Capture One?
Yes, you can do several things with focus. You can sharpen, you can soften, you can, depending on your camera. Now, this camera does allow you to focus stack or bracket in camera. And I have not learned to do that yet with this camera, but I could say, hey, I want to take 10 shots of these areas and I can hit the button on the camera and it will start the process of focusing for those areas as I sit and wait.
So it merge them together automatically too?
It won't merge them together. Almost. Coming soon, maybe, I don't know, but almost. But yeah, it will focus on those areas that you choose and create that stack for you. Yeah,
You're not manually focusing, you're
I am.
Selecting.
Yeah.
Are you manually?
Yeah, so I'm manually focusing on the different areas, but there is a focus bracketing process in the camera that you can use. You choose the areas and the camera will focus for you, manually focus for you on those areas. Yes, so you're selecting the area and it'll focus. Yep.
Do you have a system where you work, where you focus on different things, or how can you tell later on where to focus without for that, or?
You mean with if you're using a focus bracketing or?
When you're stacking your photos, when you move it from one place to another, how do you remember what you did?
Ah, good question. So in Capture One, I will come here. And I'm at the, here, I'll go down to the bottom here. Here, we'll use this one. So my workflow is to shoot what we call a base layer. And the base layer may be the edge of the plate and the tabletop. Right? And then I move up. Or I may start at, let's say there was a fruit topping on the top of this stack of pancakes. I may start there and shoot down. But typically I'm gonna start from the tabletop and the forefront of the plate and move my way up. What I will do is I will come in and capture one. And I may choose green to let me know that, now I may take 100 images, but if I see that green, I'll know that that's my starting point, right? Then that next shot, I may choose one as a star to know that's my first layer or my base layer. But if we run into a situation where we're gonna choose 12 different images, or we have to shoot 12 different images for that one particular scene, I will edit this file name and I will add what it is we shot for. So for instance, when shooting for Famous Footwear, there was a shoe that had a buckle and it had all these different, things, and it was gonna be 14 shots. So we labeled it, buckle logo. And we kept that naming convention in the file name. So you do have the ability to edit the file name right here as you're shooting. This way you're not having to take a separate set of notes and then go back and compare later that 0055 this is what we shot for. You can actually put it here in the title. I'm hoping that they will give you a little bit more room to actually add a note. Now, when I package this up and I give it to the retoucher, there is a noting system in Photoshop. And it's actually a little green note that will appear on your image in Photoshop. And you can put extensive notes in that little green note, package it up as a TIFF, send it over to the retoucher. Now, when she opens it, she can click on that note and she can see exactly the area that I want her to work in. And these are the things that I want corrected. All right. So a large majority of what you may end up doing in food to get started when you're on a set is adjusting. You're going to spend a lot of time adjusting your camera to meet whatever the spec is, and then also to make sure that you're creating a aesthetically pleasing image. Okay, so as you can see here, there's a little bit more green on this particular set of pancakes. That's a focus mask letting me know that those areas in particular are in focus. The more green, the more focus that you have. All right. So I've adjusted a little bit. Too much. I love shooting landscape, but sometimes that just does not work. This is a no-no, but I'm going to do it for the essence of time, because this basically negates what I've said about locking your mirror or, delaying your shutter. It creates vibration on its own, being that it's away from the tripod base. But for the essence of time, and usually if you're in the studio, if you're lucky to have a fold stand, it's just moving it up and down, but we don't have that. Oops. So I'll go through this process of lining things up. I will actually go through the process of sticking my head between the camera and the subject to kind of get an idea of where the camera is going and the lens is pointing. Now I also have focus peaking on in the camera, because sometimes your glasses just may not work. So focus peaking in this camera is basically highlighting those areas that are in focus in a bright red, so that I know that they're in focus. All right. And once I have that, okay, that was weird. Did I hit the button twice?
Yes.
So again, it's not perfect, but you'll learn to play around with it until you get it. And you can start adding elements to kind of make up some of the dead spaces. And then that's when you start realizing, oh, I may need more light here, or I may need more light there. So just by taking your reflective card, and this is a good time to load up your remote for your Capture One. Or you're doing this. And then you're like, well, damn, it didn't get it. It looks like it was gonna do it, but it didn't do it, right? And you have that a lot. It's just the reality of this. Sometimes this does not work. I'm just gonna be honest. Sometimes you have to adjust your lighting. But then sometimes you may say, okay, this didn't work. Let me switch to white, right? And let me reposition where I'm redirecting my light from. Am I gonna get in front of my lens? I don't know. You can stick your head in there and see, but it's sometimes a little too tight, right? This is just a game of inches and just playing around. But the beauty of this is, there we go, add a little bit of light under the plate into the fork.
Can you have it on live feed on your computer?
You can do a live view. Now, what I have found with the Fuji, and I don't know if this is a flaw, if you turn live view on with Capture One, it disables your ability for focus peaking.
Oh,
So you kind of gotta, and I've been doing this so long before the focus peaking thing,
right.
and I've gotten used to doing this that, live view for me, I don't use it. I would rather have the focus peaking
Yeah.
because I got these old eyes. But yeah, so as you can see, it gave me a little bit of light under the plate. See, these are some of the areas that are being missed in food photography. And you have these really dark shadows. And what did we say earlier about eyes rotating through images? You don't want things to break the viewer's view of the subject because we're selling a product. The brand is in our hands. We're telling a story. So we have to make sure that we're not creating roadblocks to tell the story.
Hey, I'm sure, do you often shoot on black backdrops, or you like the tablecloth isn't right, or do you change it up?
No, it depends on what I'm shooting. Now, if you're in a restaurant, you want to shoot to the restaurant lobby, right? If they have hardwood tables, or if you go to a nice Italian restaurant where they use paper, or a restaurant where they use white linen, you want to shoot to that. If you go to my website, you'll see that some of the restaurants have the same look, and it looks like you shot in the same place, and you're like, well, dang, I need to take some of these down or move them apart. If I'm doing something for my book, I'm going to play around with different tops. I'm gonna have I have a whole set of different surfaces. Just walk in the Home Depot. You can find surfaces. You don't have to have a huge surface. So I will quickly tell you, I went to Home Depot. I was looking to build a makeshift picnic table because I'm working on a hot dog ad for the summer for my book. And as I'm walking through, I found these old pieces of shipping wood in a gray dumpster. And the guy was like, yeah, you can take those. So I get them home and I have a nail gun, and not thinking,
Oh,
I
God.
put my hand on the side of the table. I'm shooting here, right? My hand is on the side of the table.
Oh,
I didn't know that there was a nail already in the wood. So when the nail gun went off, it ricocheted off of the nail that was already in the wood and came out of the side and went through my finger. Okay. So not only do you have to be careful, but when you're building things for your set, I'm making different things because I want something unique. I want something that somebody hasn't already used, or something that you're already seeing. This particular tabletop is like this really pretty, not quite a Tiffany blue, but it's like a blue picnic table that you don't readily see a lot when you see picnic ads and things of that sort. I wanted something unique. It cost me a little bit, But
Oh, yeah.
I love different surfaces, right? Because that's another source of motivation is different surfaces, right? You're walking through Home Depot and you see, some really nice, woods, granites or different things. You pick those things up, they really, really can drive some different motivation to different food types. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, a lot of this, I do quite a bit of product photography and there's a lot of similarities on, you have to experience.
Oh, yeah.
Like I've got a job coming up with, for supplements where they have a foil label or the lettering is reflective, so you have to light that properly and
Yes.
all that.
Yes.
But also, I was going I go to Home Depot and it's nice when you can find like 24-inch tiles.
Yes.
They can make nice stuff.
Yes. Yeah, I even have a piece of black plexiglass that's probably a 10 by 10-inch square that's hot glued to a baby plate that sits on a C-stand. It's less of a set. It gives me more space to move around the set because it's just a C-stand, this baby plate, and this piece of plexiglass. And once I set my liquor bottle or that beverage on that piece of black plexiglass, I can turn it white by just pointing a light downward on it. I still get that reflection from the glass in that piece of black plex, even if I'm turning it white. So it's a universal piece. So different tabletops will give you a different mood, and it allows you to be a little bit more creative.
What if you're in a restaurant situation and you have to, your background, you find the window light, but then you have to worry about kind of what the background is gonna look like.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, with the reflective cards, right? Because like, for instance, there may be a huge window and you're right at that window and you don't want to shoot into that. So you may have to shoot from this side because the window's here. Use the reflective cards to now, because this side is going to now be dark, right? So you have to kind of move around the table. You have to kind of readjust. Just as I was in the kitchen taking stuff off the shelf, sometimes in the restaurant, you got to move things around. So when I do the consultation, especially if we're going to be in there during business hours, I ask to be in a portion of the restaurant that is closed. Because you have cables, you have things that create liability. You want to be in that part of the restaurant and you want to have full access to things that in that part of the restaurant if the space permits, because you want to be able to move things around. There may be things on the wall that you could capture in the background, but if you're right up against the window in an active restaurant, you're kind of stuck. So you're left to that area to kind of figure it out, right? But having the reflective cards will help you. I even travel with a roll of diffusion paper because if that window is too big and when you arrive and there are clouds and then as you get set up and you start shooting and now it's full day, sunlight, you want to be able to account for that and be able to, not have to bump your settings so much. Yeah. Any other questions? Okay. What I want to do is I want to step away, and I want you all to have the opportunity to shoot, and I want to be able to answer your questions as you're shooting. You don't have to have a tripod. I use a tripod because I feel like I get the best results. A lot of photographers do this handheld. You can do it handheld. I invite everybody to come up and take a shot, ask questions. Because again, my goal is to make sure that your questions are answered. And I do want to, I have a pricing section. We may get to it, but I will definitely leave with you all my email address and phone number and social media handles. If you have questions, please do not hesitate to ask questions because I know what's happening out here. People are calling and they're not giving you the full details. I want you to have the things in your arsenal to go in that meeting, feel confident. Let me know, say, hey, can we talk? Give me some time to respond, and I will definitely set up some time with you to answer the questions or even give you the questions that you may want to ask, because I want to make sure you're set up for success. All right? All right. So come on out. Please be mindful of the cords. I'm going to move my stuff out of the way. And I'm going to put some of these reflectors on the table. There's a whole host of glasses and things. If you want to move things around, I'm going to be your assistant for the day. So I can help you move things around. And like I said, if you have questions, please ask me.
Go for it, Marcy.
Yes,
What lens are you using?
this is the 120 macro for Fujifilm. It's roughly a 90 millimeter equivalent to the 35 millimeter format. Yes.
You were moving it around, you said that it's not, the light is continuous.
Mhm.
It was a little hard to see from
Okay.
over there.
Yeah.
You moved it from 100 to,
Yeah,
did you move it to, was it 800 or
I jumped to
640?
800. Yeah.
You really need that's something that fast when you're doing something still?
In this,
Much higher than that.
yeah, in this
Even if
particular,
it's still?
yeah, because, well, the lights are
Have the light.
in there at half power, right? So I could have easily bumped that, but then you gotta remember too that you have glass around the table.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
So your compensation will always come, you'll have to find a balance between the source and then your camera settings to make sure you're not creating a worse situation where you have too much light. So yeah, sometimes I have to bring my ISO up in a darker situation. Sometimes window light coming through certain windows is just not enough.
Right, right.
So you have to bump it up to get that look.
And the other question was,
Yeah.
you had mentioned earlier that you, sometimes you use F10s,
Mhm.
but
That's for
you,
strobe.
oh, so you used an F4 for the continuous.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times with food, I'll use a faster aperture because I want to really knock down what's happening in
In the
the
background.
especially with glasses on the table. You can always add linear visor to your lens, but now you're darkening your overall scene, right? You may be knocking out that glare in the glass or the plateware, or something like that, even with the fork on the table, but you're darkening your overall scene of food.
That is earlier.
So I would rather just kind of,
Travel photography.
just kind of bounce the settings. So
To be ready,
be like,
competent, like, did you put those?
yeah.
No, sorry.
Yep.
Capture power.
Capture pilot. And then there's a capture pilot setting that you'll go in. Now, the capture pilot.
I just haven't used the app. I just.
Oh, yeah. Now, capture pilot, you have to be on the same network.
Yeah.
That's there's another setting in here.
Stops the player.
That's good enough.
Okay, all right.
That's what we need.
Yes, sir. All right.
I didn't realize it started at 9 this morning, so I came in late.
It's all good.
I'm just real curious what this is and why you use it or.
So it's a compendium hood. It's a little bit wider than your normal lens hood for your camera. And it's
So
really,
you
it's,
have filters too. I mean, do you often use filters?
yes.
Okay.
I'll use a linear polarizer when shooting food and beverage because the linear polarizer will help knock down some of that light that you'll get on glass or on liquid. So that's why I use that particular brand because it does hold filters.
But I don't really understand why what the purpose of that.
The compendium.
Yeah.
So
And
this
just use
particular,
it out?
this one is made for the 35 millimeter lens. Initially was what it was designed for. And I believe this one, because this is the older one, it was for 35 millimeter and for video. And that's why it's a lot wider than your normal lens. And the compendium portion allows you to stretch and retract based on the focal length of your lens and what you want as far as light coming into the lens.
Okay. And what lens are you shooting with?
That is the Fuji F 120 millimeter F 4.8. They don't make a 2.8 But this is their macro version of their 100 millimeter lens. It's roughly 90 millimeters on their medium format sensor.
You have a tilt chip lens?
Not with Fuji, they don't have any yet, but with Canon, yes. Yeah, with Canon, that's a whole different camera.
Yeah.
And I'm not very good at it, but we've had to use tilt shift lenses with food and with beverage.
I do have.
Yeah, depending on certain lenses. No, it's something new that I'm trying.
But if you separate three different things, you find.
Oh, yeah, yeah. And I want, so yeah, let me. So, there are multiple plates here, so it's a list. Let me have.
There you go. Yeah.
I'll pull that on. That way, you know, you can get more people.
Yeah, I'll take it out of my Texas.
Yeah. So, I just. And then if I need, I can adjust. Yeah. Now, here in the situation, where I want you to rent a particular
I just came up to. Okay. Never thought that. But I think take away everything. And you want to do, I don't know. Go ahead, no. Okay.
You should share with Paul, when they want or he knows.
It works for like.
That was included in house because of the bench. Like one.
Check it out. There's some second cards here too, if you guys want to touch that.
Hey, George, that's a photo of that dog.
I'll take you over. So this is, I'm gonna shoot it to the creek.
Okay.
And the reason being is because this is what even if I was to pour syrup on this stuff,
Go all the way down here.
you're going to see syrup running down the side. Whereas if you shot that, played it on the floor, and you fit over and shot straight down, you're not gonna get the same.
Okay.
And like I said, if you open any food magazine today, 99% of your shots are gonna be top. They look great,
Yeah.
But then when you start looking at that detail, it's a flat shot.
Right.
So I like to shoot it this way because now I can say, here's your fork, right? And you can position your fork in a certain way that will entice people right? And know that I need the fork in the knife to get into this one with spoon. I can see the plating and I can see these layers a lot more clearer from this angle than when I'm shooting top down. Even if you were to shoot just a little bit above this thing, maybe angle there, it's still a little bit better than shooting top down.
Right, right.
Because at that point, you're getting what's on top, you're not really getting the full depth of what the food or the plating has to offer. So for instance, there are some things
I don't know how it came out.
that look okay topping, right? Your chicken wing.
I usually.
Oops. Your chicken wing may actually us.
I've enjoyed looking at him play.
But your chicken wing may look okay. Because of its shape.
Right.
And, you know, depending on.
And if something is flat, like if you're gonna shoot a crepe or something like that, that doesn't have that depth this way, you would mainly do this so you could show.
You could, but even with a crate, because there is sometimes flat, a little flatter than, you know, most. You could shoot it the same way, right? You may cut the crate in half and
stack it.
Yeah, stack it at an angle on top of one another and shoot into that, so you can see what's inside of it, right? Because again, your job is to have the flavor skills
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I can see the thing about this picture right here.
Yeah.
You know, if you want to entice me to eat wings and buy these wings, they're good.
Right.
This is a good picture of it versus if I shot it like down here, maybe I wouldn't see all the barbecue sauce.
Right, and then you have the tray that would also interfere if you were shooting straight in. Now, I haven't finished the editing yet, but I do have a chicken wing that was on the plate. And it's on a white table and it has a bunch of sauce. I haven't edited it yet, but that's one where I'm really camera level with the wing itself and really trying to inventory. But the beauty of food is that because of the textures and the colors, it just draws so much imagination. Because we see a million and one burger shops, but there's always something. That's the beauty of going around with food. And everybody has different people to approach it. It creates a little bit of, a competition space when you come up with the
Thank you. I understand.
Can we switch? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
381, you will. Okay. 423 Epsilon on that. Yes, sir. 423. Cool. Yeah. Neo. My son crosses 18. Really? Every male in my family.
I think it'll be better. It's really.
Second. Yeah, my dad wasn't a huge fraternity fan, but so all of them in my family is Catholic. So
Yeah, the LEC.
they tried.
Missed it, and I just happened to see the announcement.
1911 started out great.
It was really nice.
It ended even better. So yeah. Pleasure to meet you.
So what I'm gonna ask you is, do you do any mentoring?
You know what? I'm looking to do a mentoring program. I'm working on a couple of things now back from a couple of the ad agencies. Looking to do a workshop series where I bring other African American photographers into the studio.
There you go. I've always been self-employed.
But I am
Degree, and
thinking
you know, when I had a full-time job, I still. Actually, I haven't focused much. You know, I haven't needed to take classes in that. Right now, I could probably brush up on more current social media because I was very engaged when it was brand new. And working with real estate broker at the time, it's really doing very enthused and gave us kind of some flexibility and, you know, something for people.
Okay.
I'm not a photographer, done it before,
Some time ago.
but I think.
No, I haven't had
be a
that.
good person. So if you have a car, it's not- Well, yeah, but-
Like, to figure out that a little bit.
I'm fine. I just want you working with George.
No. Nope. Yeah. I have not. I want to go there. It's a fantastic place, right? I think you're a little bit stricter about photography there. Somebody said like maybe no tripods or something, but that, you know, still.
Well, I was doing with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to.
Don't worry about
Oh, nice.
Set up a.
Yeah, let me know. That would be great.
Well, I mean, I
would love to know. Uh-huh.
Live shows in between. Okay, more house minute.
Okay, well belated. Oh, nice to. Great, that's nice.
So I didn't talk to you. Very small, very small. Yeah. So I've been there since 2011.
Yeah, that was a little bit.
Every morning or afternoon, mask on, how do you find that?
So in your everything.
One of those tools up top there?
Yes.
Okay.
It should work the same way.
And it's like,
Macros and
okay, so I can select.
flowers.
Yeah.
I did an update, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, so I, like my headshots, I have like styles, like custom styles, like custom masking, where I set, like, just the setup is almost always the same, right? And,
At the entrance of the park.
I set them at like 70% capacity when I set them. So when I, like, if I'm doing multiple people, I'll sort of just like adjust their capacity sliders, and I get them really close. And, then I'll export them out in the Photoshop, and, because I shoot like really triangles. And so then I move the lights. I was saying this tip for JPEG from the photo. Quick edit, do all volume mark, and boom, that'll leave me. I don't have to do skin smoothing, like I don't bake up too badly, you know.
Northland, there were a lot of like groceries and things like that.
So much.
There's one picture in Capture One that Light Woman has that I wish Capture One had, and it's a scaling flight.
Oh, yeah.
Because it says you can scale in Capture One, but I've never gotten it to work. But not to the point where I can see it before I can.
Yeah.
So, you know, with the slider idea, with a slider,
I can see it, yeah.
Get it, you know,
Like, I would suggest that.
I am.
Good about incorporating.
They are.
Some.
So I'm gonna go back to them with the notating and the
Yeah.
communication and the sliders, because that's the one thing that I missed.
Yeah, I didn't know you could add notes in Photoshop either.
Yeah.
Wow, I learned something today.
Yeah, right?
So
I just thought you can capture.
It is, it's,
I just stick to what I know, like stay on.
yeah, I keep going back to their YouTube. They're really good with their YouTube everything.
So I don't do free photography, but when I do like weddings, everything probably don't we shoot the paint.
Okay.
So but that's not real actually. When you shoot pancakes like this, this is funny. Which one would you focus on? Like I didn't notice that I put the focus like I put the focus in, but it didn't focus. Even when I do here, I didn't focus. Is there something with my camera?
No, because your camera is, let's see, what are we at? What's your setting?
Oh, yeah. I did.
Oh, no, that's just the wind. Okay, so. Yeah, F16. Yeah, at 1/100th of a second. Wow, okay. Because your aperture is very fast.
Okay.
You're gonna get a very minimal focus.
Okay.
So.
Okay, you're checking them out, sorry.
So
7-1.
we're about to get the film.
Yeah, if you want a shallower depth,
Yeah.
yes, take it down to F16, but then you're gonna have to focus in more areas and then merge that together later to get a sharper shot.
So you change it like 5 to 1.
5, 6, 7, 1. And then, and then you'll see more of that layer of pancake coming through.
Yeah, but a slower shutter spot.
Yeah, because you're gonna need to adjust, so you may bump your ISO up, and then for your shutter, I would, because your handheld, 1/60th of a second starts to slow down, before you can start seeing movement and.
I know you be wanting to eat all that.
Yeah, sometimes you do. Can we switch back to the slide presentation? Okay, I'm gonna make a quick announcement. Excuse me, everyone, real quick, can I get your attention? All right, so on the screen, the MPPA C50 will give you a $50 discount toward any tutorial or membership at proedu.com. That is a tutorial website where you'll be able to download any tutorial of your choice. Now, a lot of the tutorials are on sale for like $69.99 for a short period of time. Some of them are like $24, which is, I mean, these are $100+ tutorials. So use the coupon, download your favorite tutorial. They have everything from food, beverage, automotive, posing. They even have tutorials there that talks about commercial pricing. There are a ton of things there, and if you become a member and sign up for a membership package, you get access to everything, even the new stuff that comes out later on. So this is the code that you'll use to download and choose tutorials of your choice. And then I'll leave up also my information. Again, if you have questions, please get in touch with me or email me your questions. Give me time to respond. I do check my email quite often, but give me time to respond because I want to make sure you're set up for success. Yes, sir. I do have, I think I do have cars. I'm gonna dig some up.
Move over.
It was you. Thank you. Does George have an item on the? Let's capture one. Thank you.
Back to the other side.
She's 30.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hey, Chris. Oh, different Chris. He's talking to you. As soon as you started questioning, it had to be for you.
George.
Yes. So this is what they call a geared tripod hill.
My friend, she's like Gearhead, and I'm like, I think that's a brand. I don't think
Yeah.
that's a, so is it a Gearhead brand?
Geared hill.
That's, okay.
So I use, this is,
It was very cool when you were doing that.
oh, yeah, because you get those
Yeah,
incremental.
like, I'm like,
And then there's also,
lock it.
right, and then there's also, so this dial here, the bigger dial
Uh-huh.
will allow you to move the whole thing at once.
Okay.
Versus
Yeah,
incremental.
yeah, yeah.
Now I use, this is actually my business partners.
Okay.
Because mine was on the FOBA stand, and I didn't feel like taking the.
Yeah, I hear you.
But this is the bigger version of that. I use the man photo. This is the larger. I use it for still.
I didn't want to get into it here. Should we say goodbye to you? Is it time? Two different times to wrap it up. You can just move it around in the photo where you want, and then there's the other way where you're actually sliding. Changing. Oh,
No.
right, we're not doing that.
No.
You're just keeping
I'm
it
changing, yep, I'm changing the focus.
where you want, like, that's a highlight.
Yeah, this way, when you get those final images, they're easy to align,
Yes.
to make one.
Okay. That makes sense. All right, friends, it's time to say thank you to George.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Oh.
We have to back up. We gotta be on the screen. So, here at Maryland PPA, we have our Blue Crab pin. And a Blue Crab pin is presented to people who give excellent service in our organization and also for speakers who give excellent service. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for having me. This has really been good. And again, if you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I'm so serious.